we put together a list here. Obviously, we have some huge marquee matchups this weekend, 3 top 25 games, but those aren't always the ones that are the most competitive football games. And you and I have been talking about some of these other games that are going to be really close this weekend. So wanted to put together a mixture, a couple marquee matchup games, but then also some others that people really need to tune in for.
Yeah, and again, there's way more than 5 that we think are going to be competitive, but let's start out with 5 here. We're going to go in descending order, 5 to 1, 1 being the most competitive. USC and LSU, we broke this game down yesterday. Again, 2 teams that mirror each other so much. Questions about both defenses. 2 new quarterbacks after losing a Heisman-winning quarterback, and they're both older guys who've kind of bided their time, talented at the skill position. When I look at this game, David, it's being played in Vegas. You know, we're going to have David Pollack on to break it down even more for as our Saturday guest picker. Really excited to get DP on here. But I look at the LSU offensive line going against that USC front 7 that may be a little bit better, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit badder. But that's the biggest mismatch on the field, and I don't see how USC overcomes that in the long run.
You know, if we were able to pick what matchups we wanted preseason and just based off what would be cool narratives, this would be one, right? Like, what if we saw USC going into a new conference, play LSU, both of them replacing Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, both struggled on defense, LSU surprisingly so a year ago. Wouldn't that be a cool, fun week 1 matchup? Well, that's exactly what we get.
Yeah, and not only that, the storylines blamed on the periphery. Remember that there's a lot of talk that Lincoln Riley ran from the SEC and ran from the LSU job to go to the USC job and then tried to get this game to go away in the preseason. Now, again, that's just alleged. Some people said this, some people have said that. I don't think there's any love lost in between these 2 programs either. It's weird. It's not like they're a rivalry or like this goes back traditionally. I just feel like both these teams really don't like each other. I was listening to Will Campbell, who may be the first offensive lineman taken in the NFL draft from LSU, and you want to talk about a guy who looks ready to run the ball? I think LSU is going to get off the bus ready to run, whether it's outside zone, inside zone, power counter, gap zone, doesn't matter. I tell you, man, I think there's a little bit of hate here that not a lot of people are seeing. I think there is.
I wouldn't be surprised by that. But, I mean, obviously the big question is who's somewhat fixed their defense over the offseason?
That is the question.
I mean, you got to think about this. Both Alex Grinch gone at USC. New coordinator coming in from Missouri at LSU. I like LSU's talent a little bit more on the defensive side. I think USC has some pieces. But the difference in this game, I agree with you, is going to be LSU up front has top 3 offensive line in the nation. You know, I think both these guys did what at quarterback, backed up a Heisman. I'm not worried about that. The only question is this game is I'm not expecting either of these defenses to come out and be phenomenal. All right? Who can just be in the right spot?
Yeah.
All right. If you can just be in the right spot from a fundamental standpoint, you'll already get better. So this game is going to be interesting.
Yeah. Last thing on this, USC got rid of a coordinator. LSU lost one. Mike Denbrock, the OC, gone to Notre Dame now that we're going to see at Kyle Field. That may be on that list. We'll see. And then obviously USC moving on from Alex Grinch, bringing in Lynn from UCLA, and actually bringing in North Dakota State, who we just talked about, head coach last year, Matt Entz. That's another reason I'm not super confident in North Dakota State in this game, which they hired Wyoming's OC, which just sounds like a perfect fit to take over for North Dakota State and Matt Entz, who's the linebackers coach at USC. All right, well, we got our 4th most competitive matchup here. Here's one that not a lot of people are talking about. All right, UNLV and Houston. Houston, Willie Fritz, first year. Donovan Smith, right? Got rid of Dana Holgorsen. I've coached against Willie Fritz before. It didn't go good for us the 2 times we did. I think Houston's going to win this game. But when you look at UNLV with that go-go offense, with Marion as the OC, I think this is going to be very fun. It's going to be very exciting. The spread, I think, it's under a field goal right now. I think it started out UNLV and then flipped to Houston. I would not be surprised if this is one of those games that goes into like 3 or 4 overtimes. But the way that if you haven't seen UNLV's offense, I think you'll get a kick out of just watching the way it works. But I think this could be an absolute lightning rod of a game.
What do you have the odds over there?
I'm looking for.
I'm seeing minus 2.5 Houston and 54.5.
54.5. If I had to bet a total on here, I would go over just because UNLV is going to run. They're going to run a lot of plays. They're going to run a lot of plays, and Willie Fritz and what he wants to do offensively, while it may not be the sexiest looking, it's got some Jamie Chadwell in it too. If you watch the way both of them operate, it's almost like Chadwell's a disciple of what Willie Fritz wants to do. Remember, Willie Fritz left Tulane to go to Houston. John Summerall left Troy to go to Tulane. So some movement there. But I think this is
I
a
still
game
have 2.5. I still have -2.5 over.
That's what I see too. And before he left Tulane, he left Georgia Southern for that
Exactly
job, which
right.
I think is where you played against him.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Wish that he was still there. But either way, Houston, remember, over-under win totals for the season, 3.5.
Yep.
That struck me as low for a guy in Willie Fritz, who I think.
Well, how much can you fix in the first year there?
True, but I think I had him, what 5 wins, I think? Something
Yeah, I
like
had him
that.
beating the win. I had him over their preseason win.
5 and 7 for me.
So what are
So
we-
just barely.
So what are
But
we
this
most-
is one. This is one that I had checked off. So I think you need to beat UNLV.
So what's the most comfortable bet you would think on this? You like the -2.5 or the over?
I like the over. I would take the over.
I think both these offenses are going to
Just-
score at a good clip.
Well, I need to see Donovan Smith's development. Remember, he left, I believe it was Texas Tech. I mean, he's a
Texas
big
Tech.
body guy. Like a lot of NFL scouts are kind of falling in love with his ability. He's just got to put it together. His decision-making has got to happen faster. And with what Willie Fritz wants to do offensively, at least from an identity standpoint, I do think it is a pretty good fit. But this is a game, again, we're going to be talking about all the top ones, but I haven't seen a lot of people mentioning this one. It's going to be a lot of fun, which gets us to number 3, David.
What is number 3?
Let's pull this up.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. Miami, Ohio, and Northwestern. A game I think is going to go exactly the opposite of the way the UNLV Houston game is going to go. Miami, Ohio picked to win the MAC in the preseason. Nebraska, right? Huge year last year. Northwestern, Nebraska fans. Just saw the end there. I know you guys aren't purple. After what happened last year preseason with Fitzgerald and Northwestern and the lights and the masks and the humping and all the other stuff that went on, I thought they did an incredible job. Ended up getting him the job as the head coach. But this game I think is going to be very low scoring. Here's some notes though on why this game is going to be fun. We have another Gabbert that is still playing quarterback. It's Brett Gabbert, who had that awful leg injury last year. He's got a little bit of witch in him. Now this Miami offense lost their running back, Miami, Ohio, to Ole Miss, I believe, a couple months ago. They still got a couple guys they trust back there. But this is going to be a low-scoring, I think, methodical game. The reason I like Northwestern, and I think it's up to 3 points now, I think Northwestern is -3, is you remember Mike Wright from Vanderbilt, that quarterback? When Mike Wright takes off, okay, now I don't know if he can throw it from here to this camera that's consistently, right? He hasn't proven that. But if Mike Wright can run away from some of those SEC defenses like I saw him do, then when he takes off and he has a crease against Miami, Ohio, he's going to look like Usain Bolt. But I don't expect, I know Miami, Ohio knows that. They're going to stuff the box and force him to throw it. But another cool thing here, David, and this got a little Michigan tie-in, is that I think Northwestern's field, their home stadium, is still being renovated. So they're playing this at like the Shannon Martin Stadium right next to Lake Michigan. I think the over-under is like 40. I think this could be an absolute knockdown, drag-out, 4-quarter battle that's super-duper competitive.
Northwestern had the worst locker room in the Big Ten when I played. I know that's a while ago.
Don't worry, David. It's gotten worse.
Yeah, you thought it was bad then.
At least the lights were on. At least the lights were on.
Yeah, it wasn't a masquerade ball of humping.
How Coach Braun wins 8 games a year ago after all that at Northwestern, I still don't understand. I think he should have been up for Coach of the Year and won the award. But Miami of Ohio, like you said, predicted right now to finish first in the MAC. That's why I find this matchup fascinating. And you're talking about Mike Wright. I still remember him playing against Hawaii when he was at Vanderbilt in one of those openers a couple years ago, and did some time at Mississippi State in between them.
I thought you said it like
Rogers.
prison to play for Mississippi State. It's like, yeah, you know, he was
Spent some
you remember
time.
Vanderbilt?
He
He
did some-
he did have to run a
All
2-year
battery.
sentence in Starkville.
Well, I just hope it doesn't come down to special teams because I don't know if y'all know. But Miami, Ohio's kicker got stolen.
Yeah, to Bama. Do you remember Chuck
It
Martin
comes down
had
to
that
that.
video?
I
He's
didn't want
not
to know.
lost.
I didn't want to see the
You remember
post-game
that? We
interview.
played it on the
He's
show.
not
The media
lost.
member goes, "You lost your kicker." He's like, "No, he hadn't lost. We know where he is. He's at Alabama."
I just love Kalen DeBoer's response on that. Like,
We're like,
he entered the
who?
portal and we got him. Like, that's how you do it.
Yeah, he's like, we logged on the computer and his name was in there. What do you mean?
We went to Fanville with the Dr. Pepper
Yeah.
portal and he got suctioned through.
It's like, no, it's like, what are we talking about? Like Storage Wars with like that show where you buy the storage thing before they open it.
And it's DJU.
And it's like DJU, and then the next one you get the kicker from Miami, Ohio, but you're like, yes, yes. Grozo Award finalist, son. Let's go.
What's
Oh,
number 2 on this?
all right, second most competitive matchup. That's right.
Yeah.
Miami going to Florida. I mean, we broke this one down like I'm spinning on my head on cardboard with a boombox behind me. But we're going to keep talking about it. This game, it's going to be hot. Both teams are from Florida. I don't think anybody has an advantage there. Definitely not the advantage that Florida had when Utah came to play Florida in the swamp. Do you remember that? We talked all week of that game, and I'm telling you guys, everybody's saying that elevation is worse than humidity, and I agree with that to a certain extent. But this humidity hits different in Gainesville where they're going, and Utah was puking up Gatorade halfway through the first quarter. This is going to be a barn burner. Both these coaches need this so unbelievably badly. I'm leaning Florida right now. You're going to have to find out who I end up going with on the Saturday picks, who we all end up going with. But this one could be an all-timer. This is almost like a desperation bowl. As much as you can get out of
Michigan
conference,
Mega Bowl.
right? I don't think it's going to be the Flint Michigan Mega Bowl. I got Miami winning the ACC, but I tell you what, David, this is a matchup. I'm so excited. I'm so glad they scheduled this. Everybody wins in this matchup.
I'm so glad this game got scheduled. To me, Miami should play Florida and Florida State, and all three of those programs should play each other every single year. And we've been talking about for a while now. Okay, Miami and Florida State. When are they going to get back up to where they were? Well, we saw that last couple seasons. Mike Norvell turned Florida State around, undefeated season ago, just left out of the college football playoff, and now Miami going to come in with more expectations than we've seen. Really, since I was a teenager, basically, and when they were in the Big East. So let's see if they live up to them. I'm a big believer in Cam Ward, but obviously, look, you're going to start off in the swamp, and right now it's still -2.5 Miami, 53.5 on the over/under.
Is this the bet? I was trying to remember this, Blaine, and I know you're younger than me, and maybe somebody in the chat can help out here. Is this the best overall that the state of Florida has ever been when you look at the teams? I know Florida hasn't been what they typically have been in our lifetime, but Miami right now looking like, hey, could win the ACC for the first time ever. Some people think they could win that championship. But let me finish. UCF thinks going to be really, really good. South Florida with Golish is going to be pretty damn good. Then Florida State, I know they lost to Georgia Tech, but coming off an undefeated year, it's just an interesting time.
I just feel like if Florida State and Florida are mediocre, I don't know if they can be the best, right?
I just remember in the late 90s when I was first getting into college football, you still had Spurrier at Florida coming off a national championship. That's when Chris Winkie was at Florida State, so he was one of the Heisman Trophy.
Who is at where now?
National championship.
Chris Winkie?
Oh yeah, he's at Georgia Tech with Buster Faulkner,
exactly
co-OCs. Right. And then Miami was right there around that time when Larry Coker was coming in, and there was a lot of excitement. I can't speak to Central Florida or South Florida.
Maybe I'm just thinking on the periphery, it's kind of juicing it up, but it's going to be a hell of a matchup. All right, let's get to number one. What is the number one? That's A&M and Notre Dame. This one, you want to talk about an atmosphere. And look, the swamp's going to be nuts. Morgantown and West Virginia, they're going to be burning furniture. I don't know how, any furniture company survives out there, especially when West Virginia's good. But this atmosphere at Kyle Field, and this is my thing with A&M. And you're going to see a little bit of this we talk with David Pollock on Saturday. I think this may be one of the best fits. And, the word fit gets thrown around, I think, a little bit too much in college football. But Mike Elko and A&M, this atmosphere at Kyle Field, his first game there, right? You get Notre Dame coming into town. This is what college football is all about. Both sides are going to be hyped up. Both these teams are going to be uber physical. You've got defensive coaches on both sides, which I think leads to conservative decision-making when it comes to whether to go for it, whether to kick a field goal or go for it, or try a surprise onside kick or whatever. I think this one is going to be a four-quarter slobber fest. I like A&M right now in this game. I have the whole offseason, even when the numbers were the other way. But Blaine, when you look at this game, it's tough not to put this one at the top of the list.
I think this will be the most physical game of the weekend.
I don't think that's
even
crazy.
With the Clemson-Georgia game happening. I think both these teams, I think the front seven for A&M, it's going to be interesting because you talk about it all the time. Notre Dame's known for what? They're really big up front. They're really good. They're going to have a good back and a tight end. And their defense always has a couple guys, but they lost a couple pieces up front in injury. You lose Joe Alt to the NFL. I think A&M's front seven and two deep is really nasty, especially the transfer they got from Purdue. And we'll see how. I think it's going to come down to who plays better of Wegman and Riley. Who's the healthiest? Both these guys coming off big injuries. Both these guys can run. Riley a little bit more than Wegman. But this is going to be an interesting game. I'm also leaning A&M.
Well, I wonder, since you do have two defensive coaches who most of the time play conservative, some don't. David, do you think this could be the coach who takes the first chance? Or the one coach who takes a chance wins the game?
That's interesting, and I think that'll be Marcus Freeman. I think Marcus Freeman feels a little bit
on the road,
sense of urgency.
Like, yeah.
And plus, last year, Notre Dame started off last year. I thought they were one of the best teams in the country, just how balanced they were, not only on offense and defense, but the way they ran their offense, and they brought Sam Hartman in. But we didn't really get to see a great test till they played the Buckeyes on the road. Then that ends up being a 17-14 game, sloppiness at the end with them trying to get lined up on defense, and they lose the game. Now we get to see right off the bat. Because if you go and you beat Texas A&M on the road, no one's going to be saying, oh, well, Mike Elko was in his first year. Well, you're the underdogs. Right now, I'm looking at this right now. Notre Dame's getting a full 3 points. And honestly, even if you buy that up to 3.5, you get the field goal plus the hook. Notre Dame's odds are still minus 134.
What's money line?
Money line Notre Dame is plus 124.
Is the over-under 46.5?
46.5.
Man, it's going to be so hard for me not to take A&M money line and the under in this game just because the way I think it's going to go.
As a parlay or two separate bets?
I think either way. Like now, as you know, the ones we put out, I'll probably do individuals if I do both of them, but personally, I might parlay it. It just depends. I think the coaching matchup in this game, and I get both teams have defensive coordinators, but it's Mike Elko and it's Marcus Freeman. So on the defensive side, you have that matchup. Then on the offensive side, I mean, you got Colin Klein, a guy that Marcus Freeman wanted a couple years ago and didn't get. You remember he's a pretty good player at Kansas State. I love what he does offensively. Kind of a little bit like what Willie Fritz does now that I think about it. Him going up and Mike Denbrock on the other side for Notre Dame. These are two really, really unbelievable defensive minds and two incredible offensive minds. The game plans go, I can't wait to see the script just for each team on the first drive. Somebody, knowing these guys, they'll both throw it on the first play. Like, because they're thinking, all right, going to feel each other out. We're going to play a game of nervous. Oh, I'm nervous. Don't touch there. But I tell you, I'm so excited for this one. And I know they're going to be screaming into the woods at midnight the night before there in College Station, but Notre Dame's going to bring some people too.
And how exciting for this game to get scheduled. We talk a lot of times about Notre Dame hadn't joined a conference, but hey, you're going to Texas A&M week 1, and then Texas A&M has been scheduling a lot of these games. That was so much fun watching them go to Miami a year ago, watching Connor Wegman go back and forth, even when it was Tyler Van Dyke at that time. That was a heck of a football game. So we're going to get to find out a lot of information week 1.
Man, I cannot wait. All right, the phone line's going to open here in 15 minutes. Let's real quick get to the chat before
Chat. Let's go to Mike and McLean. What's up, Mikey? He says, I'm going to take Penn State versus West Virginia game not being on that list as a sign of respect for the Nittany Lions.
Well, it's like I prefaced before. These aren't like the top 5 matchups of like the top teams. We've gone through that one with the fine-tooth comb. We're talking about what games we think will be the most competitive. I think West Virginia, Penn State would probably be 6. I get a little bit nervous about Penn State late, maybe adding on, but I think that game's going to be super competitive. I mean, I can go down the list of other games we think that are going to be really competitive. And now these are on the weekend, obviously. You look at, again, the Coastal Jacksonville State game that we brought up earlier. Minnesota, North Carolina, I think, could have been on this list. I look at that game, and that one may come down to the wire. It's under a 3-point spread. So I want to make sure nobody gets confused. This isn't the top 5 highest-ranked matchups. We all know those. Those are self-explanatory. These are what we think are going to be the most competitive games. But I would have had Penn State and West Virginia 6.
Let's go to Frozo. All right, okay, where's my super suit? He says, is it just me or USF the G5 playoff lock?
I think calling anything a lock from the playoff from a G5, even though they get that automatic bid, is tough. When you look at South Florida's schedule, you got to go to Bama, right, which you're probably not going to win that one. The rest of it kind of evades.
And Miami.
You got Miami.
You get them at home. Miami at home. At Tulane. Memphis at home. UAB, Florida Atlantic, Navy. I mean, those are the tough ones.
I don't think USF is going to be the G5 team that makes it. They could spoil it for Memphis. If they find a way to maybe split one of the two, Miami and Bama, and take care of the rest, then they probably would be. I wouldn't go that far, Frozo.
Well, I'll tell you what, if that's the case, if South Florida ends up being the G5 team because they split Alabama and Miami and won all the rest of their
they could win,
which would include a win over Memphis, who we think could be the G5. Not only are they going to make it, they could win a game.
That's danger. I would not want to see that. They're like that basketball team that is in the small conference, but they're really good and they get like an at-large because they go like 32-1.
Which is all we want to see, man. We don't want to see a walkover 12 seed every year.
I don't want to see what happened with Oregon and Liberty last year in that game. I don't want to see that. Hey, what's up, YouTube? Hey, if you haven't, look, football season's here. Hit that subscribe button. If you've already subscribed, get somebody else to subscribe. Please share in the show. Hit that like button. We really, really appreciate all your support.